All right, let's move away from the All-Star selections and let's head into a bit of NBA fantasy chat. So our weekly segments that we're going to go through here, we're just going to touch on a couple of buy low players. I'll throw it to you first, Cal. Who have you got for our first buy low candidate?
My first buy low candidate hasn't been playing well recently, so it's got to be DeAndre Ayton.
Yep.
He has kind of fallen off the past couple of weeks. He's, a top 20 player, can be a top 20 player. Drafted at 19 in preseason was the rank. Right now, he's only putting up about 14, 12, and his blocks has really gone down to this 1.1. His field goal is still there, and his three throws are still there. But when you're just putting a mediocre kind of 14 and 12 with not a whole lot more, I guess the field goal is pretty good too. But you can still pick up guys like that off the waiver wire. You could pick up someone like Tristan Thompson who could, have a good week and put numbers like that. So he's fallen down to 74 on Yahoo in the past 2 weeks, which is it's obviously not great. So if you have hope that he'll bring it back, maybe he will. He's still Chris Paul. He, in the scheme of things, he probably has been a bit disappointed pretty much this season, just because we're expecting a 20-10 season.
The scoring has not been there at all.
Yeah, exactly. So he's fallen off. You could buy low.
Yeah, I think with this guy, there's a bit of I don't know. I know that he was touted to be a top 20. He was obviously ranked 19 preseason by Yahoo, and I probably thought he was a third round guy or a late second round dude. Didn't expect this sort of a drop off for him, but I think it is real to an extent. I don't think that if you're trading for him, you should expect the player that we expected before the season started. He's definitely not. I don't think he's going to be a top 30 player. I think he does still have an outside shot from this point on to be a top 50 player. But I definitely wouldn't be sending a top 50 player to get him. I would be trying to buy at where he is ranked currently, like in that 75 to 100 sort of zone, and just sort of catch a worried owner. The scope for him improving, where do you see him getting better from here for the rest of the season, Cal? So is it his rebounds, his points? What do you think is going to improve from here?
It's got to be his blocks. So that's where he should be getting a lot of his value. I mean, the past couple of weeks has only put up less than a block a game, which is not what he should be doing. So if he can get that back up to above the 1.5 kind of range, that elevates your team a lot. And then, as you mentioned, the rebounds as well. He has to get those back up. The past couple of weeks, it's dropped down. He needs to pick up his game. I would like to see him hit that like kind of 50 value. I think in the preseason, as you mentioned, we did kind of overestimate what he was going to be. He probably is more of a 50 kind of value, but right now he's putting up that low 70 to 90 per week. So if he picks the blocks up, gets those rebounds, he's definitely worth owning.
Yeah, I can also see maybe a little bit of an increase in scoring. If I compare his stats to last year he was averaging 18 points a game, shooting 15 shot attempts. This year, he's only shooting the 10 shot attempts, so 5 shots less. He's actually shooting more efficiently, but the 5 shots less is tough to come back from. And like you said, he averaged 1.5 blocks last year, under the 1 blocks per game recently. So I definitely think those would probably be the 2 biggest things that would increase his value and drive his rank up a bit higher. So if that's what you're looking for and wanting from him, I think you can do that. But I don't think you should expect him to go anywhere near that 20 points per game. Maybe he's like a 15 and 12 with a block and a half sort of for the rest of the season. I'll shout out my first buy low player, and it is a very highly ranked player. It is Kevin Durant, who has been battling a bit of injury recently and is still out a little bit longer. But the latest report is that he's going to be back before the All-Star break, but they're not looking to rush him. So he obviously missed 3 games, came back and played, and then missed a bunch of other games. So there's a lot of owners out there who I think will be impatient. Obviously, he hasn't had that many games playing with James Harden and Kyrie. So you could also use that narrative to sort of scare some owners and think, oh, he's not going to be a top 10 player with those guys on the team and things like that. I think he will be. I think he'll be just fine. He's just that perfect player to fit in a team like that. And he's the best player on this team. I don't think there's any question there. So I think he is someone that you could get for below value and potentially sort of steal a player away from a nervous owner, especially if you can wait just a few games. I don't think it'll be too long, but a few games before he's back. What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, he should be coming back soon, but yeah, look, he's missed some time, and
Yeah.
you could even persuade the person who owns Kevin Durant that he's going to miss more time. He's got the injury history from
he's coming off an Achilles.
Season.
Yep.
That's it. They're tentative. They're winning games without him. They're on a 5-game winning streak.
Yeah.
Road trip as well, 5-game road trip in the West, and they just went over there and just destroyed a few teams. So that Brooklyn team's looking pretty threatening. Kevin Durant apparently isn't necessary for wins at this point. James Harden and Kyrie Irving are absolutely balling out. But I mean, look, Kevin Durant's an MVP candidate, really, is what he was playing before. He did, miss a few games here and there. So if you can persuade someone, it's definitely worth going for.
Yeah, I think you could definitely throw in someone who's been overperforming recently. Let's take, if you could pull this off, that'd be amazing. But take someone like a Terry Rozier, who's the 16th ranked player over the last month of the season. Maybe you could make that work, or maybe add him with another piece. Who knows? Throw in someone like a Pascal Siakam, who's the 18th ranked player, or Zach LaVine. I think if you can do a Zach LaVine, that's probably on the higher end of things. I would maybe, if you're really keen and bullish on him, you're not worried about injury history, that might be a good one. Chris Paul, who's a 12th ranked player over the last month, I would throw an offer for him for Kevin Durant. Few players that I think you could throw at him and get a good value back in return. Tobias Harris, we're saying he's having a career year. Throw him at the Kevin Durant owner, and he might want someone who's just a safe, steady, risk-free, injury-free sort of player. So definitely helps if you're higher up in your league. Let's go on to your next buy low player there, Cal.
My next buy low player is CJ McCollum. And it can be a bit situational, but he should be reevaluated in about a week's time. You could be expecting him to become back maybe in the next couple of weeks or so. So he's been out for, close to a month, maybe even over a month. So the thing when this happens is when he's probably a third or a fourth rounder. And when a player like that kind of caliber does go down in your team that rely heavily maybe on his threes or things like that, you might find that whoever owns him is falling in the rankings, could be panicking a bit, and he could be open to a bit of a buy low trade for CJ, just because, as I mentioned, he can be so valuable to a lot of teams. So if you have someone in that position who's fallen the rankings with CJ, throw a flyer at him, throw a few different, players who can obviously score, but if you can get the value there, he was putting up crazy numbers before he went down. So
any concern about how he's going to return after the injury? Obviously, it's a fractured left foot. It's nothing. It's not a small injury. And I get a bit nervous with feet. So are you worried about how he's going to return after the injury?
Look, sometimes you have to spin the dice in fantasy.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
Let's face it. Sometimes
that's a fair point. And especially if you're not too sure if your team's going to be a championship contender, I definitely agree with that. And perhaps you'll have an owner like me who's a little concerned. You can use that as an argument. Hey, he's a fractured foot. Maybe his career's done. I don't know. Maybe he won't play again this season.
That's
it. Could be over. You got to roll the dice. I do think it's a risky play, personally. So I'm not sure exactly how high I'd want to go. And you see that ranking next to his name. He's like the 6th ranked player. So maybe the owner's going to ask for a fair bit in return. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure where I would want to trade. But if you can maybe trade someone outside the top 50 to get him, then I think maybe you can pull the trigger and do so. But I probably wouldn't go higher than that, just based on the risk of how he's going to look after the injury. And I think he was overperforming before the injury anyway. So it just depends on how the owner values him and how much they're panicking with the injuries. So if you've got a worried owner, you might be able to get something there.
I think I'd be willing to offer someone like the 40s, maybe 50, just to get him, because he's been playing so well previously, and he can fit a lot of really good teams. So
he's not going to hurt you anywhere.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'll throw out my next buy low, and this one is, I'll say it's probably a bit of a controversial one, because he might even be on your waiver wire. You might even be able to just go scoop him up and pick him up right now. And that's Andre Drummond. I think obviously he's not playing right now. They're waiting for a trade of some kind, or a buyout. Not sure which it's going to be, or how long it's going to be. So it is a bit of a risky one. And obviously he's only going to fit certain teams. So he's a punt free throw percentage guy. But I think regardless of if he's a starter or if he's even coming off the bench on a new team, I think he's going to put up stats. I think he's the kind of guy that doesn't need a huge amount of minutes to put up stats. And if he does land in the right situation, let's say he does go to the Toronto Raptors, he is going to be that top sort of 30 player that we are expecting. So there's a higher risk with this play, but at this stage, I really don't think you have to give up much for him. A lot of people are panicking. A lot of people think that this guy is just going to go to the bench on the team and sort of not be the player that you expected. Obviously, they were frustrated when he was sharing the minutes with Jarrett Allen. So that's still sort of bitter in owners' mouths. So I don't think you're going to have to give up much. And I would be offering someone outside the top 100 to try and get Andre Drummond. And like I said, maybe just check your waiver wire. He might even be there. I've seen some forums where people are saying that they have been dropping Andre Drummond. So I think he's a bit of a buy low. What are your thoughts on Big Drummond?
He'll definitely be back. He'll put up numbers. I can see him either going to Toronto or Boston. I think could actually be pretty likely scenarios. He could even somehow end up at Brooklyn if there's some kind of buyout. But I doubt there'll be a buyout. They'll have to get surely they can get like at least a second round pick from him because he's expiring. So it's not like it's on the books later on. So at a minimum, he's worth a second rounder. So I don't think Brooklyn will snatch him up. But in the scheme of things, if he goes to Raptors, he'll have great numbers like he always does. And if he goes to Celtics, he'll be the starting center. He'll probably, maybe his minutes will come down a bit, but he's still going to have great boards. He still have those counting stats and the steals and blocks.
I wouldn't be trading him expecting to be the player that we drafted him on the Cleveland Cavs, but there is a chance that he will be that player. So I think it's a low risk, high reward kind of play, especially if you can buy low on him with someone around that 100 rank mark, because he's got the scope to be a top 30 player. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. You're not going to lose too much if you manage to buy low. So it could be potentially, if you pull the move off right, a league winning move, especially if it fits your build. Obviously, take into account his free throw percentage sucks. So you have to be punting that category.